Supposedly.
Here we go. We were just off camera having a little discussion about the new camera placement.
It's better. So it's so better.
We're like a little bit more in everyone's face. Welcome. Good evening. It is Monday. I am Matt. This is Jocelyn. We're a little late this evening.
It's a new schedule.
Yeah, you have some theater obligations.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
the you have to walk through your fears.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever sing a cappella in harmony,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to sing a cappella in harmony with two other women.
Well, it sounds like
I
you have something to work on.
I said I don't harmonize. He said, "Oh."
All right, let me make sure that I have the Vim TV stream going. I believe it is, but I just want to make sure that everything is posted to Hive correctly. While I'm doing that, we have wine as usual. Maybe this will be no. The light still sucks. Me trying to show.
No, I can.
This is called Banshee. This is Pinot Noir. Well, oh yeah, I didn't flip the camera this time, but it's Pinot Noir from Sonoma County. Again,
this was the girls. I took the girls to the liquor store.
The deviancy of our children.
And they picked all of the labels.
Yes.
Every one of them.
Okay.
I think Piper picked this one.
Okay, so you do the honors with that one. I am trying to just make sure really quickly that the stream is rolling here. And as usual, a reminder, like, comment, subscribe, share, help us out. And we are up on the Hive blockchain right now, which is fantastic. Something to mention, we are live on Odyssey as well as vim.tv, VIMM.tv. So if you are on either one of those blockchains, you can always throw us a thumbs up or an upvote and help us with crypto on those platforms. Interesting smell. All right. Good interesting, not bad interesting. But so, are you drinking straight from the bottle? Jesus, it's that kind of evening, isn't it? And a reminder.
Lunch or dinner. I feel like
I'm not even through the intro yet.
This is good.
And a reminder, if you are listening to the audio podcast, help us out with either a rating or a review or a thumbs up or a 5-star or whatever podcatcher you're on. Help us with that so this gets broadcast out to more people. So
this has an interesting aftertaste.
Okay. Especially when you drink from the bottle.
It's a really nice beginning.
Hold on. I feel bad.
Interesting aftertaste.
I feel bad. Scott's still like in the green room, and I promised we would get him on quickly. But also for my birthday, if you can check it out here, we have ungovernable wine glasses. How about that? So in the comments down below or on the side, if you would like us to try and set this up as merch, we can definitely make that happen for you. So we'll try and figure that much out. But that one is for you. You can go ahead and do the honors pouring as well. So this evening we are talking about crypto.
I know nothing about crypto.
You know some crypto words, right?
I know there's like Icebox.
Icebox, cold storage.
Cold storage?
Yes, cold storage wallet. Yeah, you're close.
And I know that you're not supposed to go with Coinbase because that's what the government wants. That's what I know. And I know there's some ARG in there somewhere.
Ooh, ARG, Pirate Coin. Yes, good reference.
That's what I know.
Yeah, and some Monero.
That's as much as I listen to you.
So with that, we have a fantastic guest, a returning guest from ages ago that it's taken me a while to get him back on here of my own scheduling conflict issues. But so Scott C. Business is with us this evening. Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. That was a fun little intro.
Yeah. We like to consider it a under control dumpster fire. So really quickly, if anyone is not familiar with you, who are you? What do you do? And where can they find information about you?
Yeah, so I guess the main thing that I do is I review and test and share all my results from using blockchain and crypto monetized social media platforms. So, finding ways that you can earn crypto and get value from the things you're already doing. And then I share that with everyone, and I do interviews and tutorials and a bunch of other stuff at the same time. And you can pretty much find me anywhere under @ScottCBusiness or Crypto and Things.
Are you like a Hive? I do know Hive.
Yeah.
Are you like a Hive person?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on all of them. I'm on a ridiculous amount. I try to use like 40 to 50 platforms.
What?
But, it's quite the undertaking.
You must have like some kind of OCD, because unless you have some kind of OCD, you can't do that.
Or you're just very good at multitasking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get to use them as much as I probably would like to because of that. I mean, even just posting a video takes hours for all these platforms, but it is what it is.
Awesome. And some of my favorite videos of his are the ones where he goes through his spreadsheet of his crypto earnings for like the month or like the quarter.
Is it insane?
Well, I mean,
I
like
don't understand.
what's
Not
interesting
lately,
is how it
but-
changes from month to month, right?
Yeah.
Well, like 1 month it's great.
Well, no. Each one of the different platforms he's on, sometimes the earnings
Because the
change.
crypto goes up and down depending on
The crypto changes, also the algo, or not necessarily the algo, but how things rank in terms of how people are seeing it within the different platforms also changes too. So it's pretty interesting stuff. I feel like I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't give some screen time to whatever drink you're having on your end of the recording. Are you a
I
beer
just got
person,
my,
wine person?
Yeah, I'm a
or-
beer guy. I got my little frosted mug here.
I had a
of,
beer.
some
Yeah.
Michelob.
I had it Oktoberfest.
Yeah,
This is
Oh,
why
that explains why you're drinking from the bottle.
No,
right
no,
at the
I
onset.
literally only have that much gone. I went outside. I'm like, for like a 5-minute pregame.
All right, we are, to quote Rodney Dangerfield, we're off to a great stop. So, what we want to talk about, or at least what I wanted to talk about this evening, was we'll talk a little kind of like, crypto 101 and things like 101 and stuff like that. But what I really wanted to talk about is specifically, like maybe the last 6 months, there's been tons of things, especially with the drop in the market and some of the protests that have been going on and some of the stories about crypto, where a lot of what I would consider the selling points of crypto have at least been tested, if not, some of them have reached their breaking point. And so I definitely wanted to talk about a number of those. The first I want to talk about is just in general, the crypto market. I mean, we've seen Bitcoin go from, a 60 handle down to what, 23, 24 right now, right? And so all the hodlers are still yelling, hodl and stack, right? But there's just tons of other people that were disaffected because they were buying at 40 and 50 and 60.
Yeah.
What's really been your take in terms of how that dynamic has played out, where we just had this gigantic bull market and then a very vicious pullback in just the overall crypto market?
Yeah, I mean, I started investing in 2017, unfortunately for me,
Mm.
because the crash was in 2018. And so I've sort of subscribed to the halving theory that like Bitcoin runs in 4-year cycles, and pretty much every time that it goes way up, it comes down like 80%. So I've sort of like mentally prepared for that, and that's kind of what I've seen previously this cycle. I'm kind of just waiting for the next halving at this point. And
What does
I
that
mean,
time
the
frame look like?
market's I think it's in here. Wait, I could check. It's bitcoinblockhalf.com, I believe.
What are we like?
But
1 year off,
I think
2 years
it's
off?
like 2 years out from where we are now.
Okay.
Yeah, 598 days.
And so,
So
for someone who's completely green,
Yeah.
what does halving mean?
yeah, so every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that's being created by the miners when they mine a block, they get half as much. So right now, when a block is mined, there's 6.25 Bitcoins created or minted and distributed amongst the people who are mining it, and that will go down to 3.125 in about 598 days. So why that's a big deal is because it's supply and demand. If there's way less Bitcoin being created every day or every time a block is mined, then obviously like there's going to be more pressure, there's less Bitcoin available on exchanges for people to buy. So generally that's always what's kind of pushing Bitcoin up. And the only thing to keep in mind is every cycle it's going to be less impactful than the previous cycle because it's half of a half of a half of a half. So it's eventually going to be pretty stable in the future, and assumably like the last Bitcoin will be created in like 2144, assuming everything kind of tracks along as it is now. But that's a very general estimate.
From a very, very, now you have talked to me about mining. To me, it sounds like you're going in with like a pickaxe and trying to find something to hold. Like what? I don't understand it. Like, what is like crypto mining? I'm sorry, is this too rudimentary?
No,
I don't
that's fine.
understand it
So
all.
if you had to put it simply, Scott, how would you define mining and essentially the solving process that goes into authenticating a block on the blockchain?
Yeah, so I mean, not all cryptocurrencies are proof of work. Proof of work is just one consensus model, and that's with mining. So what mining is like you're just trying to prove that some type of work has been done to create value, essentially. So what miners are GPUs, like graphics cards in a computer, or in a device like a miner that you would buy. They're just solving complex algorithms to simply just prove that there's work being done to actually like that it's not just anyone could just instantly do the mining and get a ton of bitcoins. There has to be some type of level of difficulty to actually acquire it, and they do that with mining. The biggest criticism is that it uses a lot of electricity and energy, but I would argue that most Bitcoin mining is done with renewable energy, and there's a lot of interesting projects that kind of get around that. Like one cool example in Vancouver here in Canada is they use miners in the winter in apartment buildings to heat the buildings instead of just letting all that exhaust heat and trying to deal with that and cooling and everything. Instead, they use it to heat the buildings, so that's much more energy efficient. But essentially, it's using energy, electricity cost, and then the time that it takes is the value that's in Bitcoin, essentially.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand that.
No, so
like I think I understand it on a level.
You can also think of it in terms of every single time a block gets like minted or
What is
printed.
a block?
A block is essentially a collection of data, and so the blockchain is a bunch of these different blocks of data that all kinds of different ones. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But so there are different chains, Bitcoin being one of them, right? And so each time a block gets minted or printed or validated, it's essentially a math problem that's going through that they're trying to solve for, trying to figure out to make sure that the block has actually done the work that's recorded during that time period. Does that make sense, Scott? Am I off base on that?
Yeah. I like a better way to describe it, I would say, is like it's like the internet, but the people who are keeping the internet running are being rewarded for their efforts as just individual users versus like big companies like Google and Amazon. It's individual users that are doing that work, and then they're being rewarded with Bitcoin.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's the idea of Bitcoin being that there's no central authority that's saying that this is valid information.
Wait, Bitcoin is not a specific crypto that's being traded on the stock market?
Well, no, it's not. I mean, there's ways to trade it through the stock market, which is probably what contributed to it going to 60,000 as well, because tons of the hedge funds got involved, and now you have essentially artificial demand for crypto.
But Bitcoin is like a big name for all crypto.
Bitcoin is like the biggest. It's like the largest.
It's like the first mover, so that's why it has a lot of.
I'm sorry, I'm so new to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Like to wrap your head around that, like I totally believe like the players in the world want digitized money, and that's scary. That needs to go aside. But like I think when you talk about all of this like untraceable stuff, I think that's important.
Well, like privacy coins and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so there's all kinds of different flavors, and we could get into that if you want. But there's all kinds of different flavors or brands of crypto or whatever, right? And all of them have different things that go into them to make them what they are, right? So Bitcoin's biggest selling point is scarcity. There's only so many Bitcoins that are going to be minted ever in the history of the world, right? Which, by the way, Scott, you probably know this. When the last Bitcoin gets minted, do we now just not have an incentive to continue to mine, or will there be some kind of reward, continued reward that will be given to miners to continue to validate those blocks as they keep going?
Yeah, I had this before, but now I'm forgetting. It's like there's still going to be a way for people to validate the network and keep it running. Luckily, it's not going to be in our lifetimes. But, so that's a future problem. But yeah, my understanding is that there will still be some way that they'll be rewarded, and it'll be so small. Like it'll probably just be transaction fees, but because Bitcoin will be worth so much, that will be enough money to just pay the miners with just the transaction fees. That's my understanding anyways.
Okay, wait. So I think I wrapped my head around something. Gold standard. Gold is what backs the gold standard, right?
what backs whatever currency you're using.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you're an American dollar, debt basically backs that, right?
Hopes and dreams, pretty much. Yeah.
And then if you're crypto, it's data that backs it.
To a degree, like the electricity that you're using, the time put into actually mining, and the data is what you're actually validating as the miners. But yeah, I would akin Bitcoin to digital gold. Essentially, all the qualities of gold with none of the negatives. So, I can't take all my gold with me, go to the airport, fly to some random country because they're going to confiscate it. I can't bring that much.
Right.
But you can bring any amount of Bitcoin. I could send it around the world instantly. If I want to sell my gold for the actual value, I'd probably have to go and do it somewhere legit and get it checked by someone to make sure that it's there's no counterfeit, stuff like that. Because there's no counterfeit Bitcoin. You can really easily sell it. You can transfer it around the world instantly. You can bring it anywhere with you. So it's essentially just solving a lot of the inadequacies of gold. Plus, I would also say to anyone who says Bitcoin uses too much electricity that if you compared Bitcoin to gold mining, which is all diesel, it's infinitely better for the environment.
Yeah.
Or do it against electric cars in 2030.
Specifically in California. So that raises a good question. So that's one of the things that really had kind of caught my eye recently was there was actually a story on, I think, Bloomberg or one of the other financial papers the other day that essentially said, will the U.S. government or governments around the world either hugely regulate or ban proof of work? Because proof of work, as far as the blockchain goes, is pretty much right now the most energy intensive way of validating blocks or mining new coins. You had already mentioned that there are already green energy operations that mine using some of the, I'll use air quotes, cleanest, right, energy that we have. But so that being said, do you think that's a realistic possibility, or do you think, because I mean, from my perspective, you could ban proof of work in most of the industrialized world. A lot of miners would just pick up and move to Uzbekistan or something like that and continue mining there as long as they had, enough energy in order to keep the machines going. What's your thought process on that? Do you think that's a material risk to the future of something like Bitcoin that's built off of proof of work?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of Bitcoin is, we've over the years we've seen governments ban it, unban it. So I think because it's so globalized, it's not going to be that big of an issue. Also, one of the benefits is recently in Canada we had our Rogers, one of our biggest telecoms, go down. We didn't have government services for a little over 24 hours, and half of people's internet and telecoms were down, including we couldn't use our debit cards. You couldn't e-transfer. A lot of different things were not working, but crypto was still working fine because it's not, restricted to just Canada. It's global. So it doesn't rely on the Canadian, infrastructure for it to keep working. So that was a really good example of why something that isn't centralized is so much better, because, if people couldn't get access to money aside from cash, obviously, crypto was an answer there.
Yeah. I love that aspect of it. That's one of the things that really attracted me to it in the first place, because it does address a lot of those shortcomings of traditional money or fiat currency and gold and things like that. But really beyond that is the redundancy and the decentralization that's just inherent in it or built within it. So I do also find it interesting that a lot of world governments are going after the regulation of these exchanges. Like you mentioned Coinbase at the beginning. I specifically veer away from exchanges.
Are they going after it, or are they looking at it as a way to somehow make their digital money? I mean, I feel like there's
well, I mean, so that
I feel like they want to co-op.
We could get into conspiracy theories, but I think the first step in any of these kind of new competitors to whether it's currency or investments or anything like that is they go to regulation. That's always the first step, right? That regulation, do you think that undermines the value of Bitcoin? Or because, I mean, from my perspective, a lot of people also got into Bitcoin if they were kind of privacy nerds or security maximalists. they wanted to keep as much knowledge of their personal financial transactions away from centralized authorities as possible. Do you think that's going to weigh heavily or do you think it's just kind of like the Tom, Dick, and Janes that are going to Coinbase because they advertise a lot, and the people that are really security based are still going to have options that are elsewhere where they can kind of avoid, the boogeyman or the eye of Sauron, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's really just for like the beginners to use, exchanges and trade on exchanges, and people who get a little more deeper into it. They're like, okay, I need to keep my crypto on a wallet. Beyond that, they're going to start looking at like privacy coins and things of that nature. So I think it kind of goes in phases. I mean, anyone who's buying crypto on like PayPal, very, very introductory. Like they're very, very new. They clearly don't know like
I know, and I just ask so many rudimentary questions, but I see the crypto on PayPal and I'm like, that's not the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, we even like some of our stock exchanges here, like Wealthsimple in Canada, you could buy crypto, but you can't transfer it or withdraw it. I don't know if that's changed for Robinhood, a major stock exchange in the States, but for a long time, you could trade crypto, but you couldn't actually withdraw it or actually, send it or do anything with it or spend it. So it was very centralized. And I think the problem is a lot of people are going to opt into that for convenience, or they just don't know enough, or they're not going to like research much. So I would say for anyone who's really not going to get that deep into it, you're better off just investing through like an ETF in the stock market if you know how to trade stocks. Because like then you can also get different benefits. Like you can trade in like in Canada, we have a tax-free savings investing account, so you could not get taxed on your capital gains on your Bitcoin. There's a lot of benefits that you could do through investing through the stock market, but if you actually want the real benefits of crypto, you need to buy it on an exchange, withdraw it, hold it in a wallet, kind of do all the little nuances. But yeah, and then if you get really deep into it, it's privacy coins and all that other stuff as well.
You're from Canada. Did you experience all the trucker thing? Did they mess with crypto with the trucker thing?
We were actually talking about this offline. So without getting too political, because I know we don't want to put Scott under the gun, especially being one of our neighbors to the north. But what did you take from that whole situation?
Did they cut off crypto?
Well, Scott will explain it to give people background if they're not familiar with it, if they've been living under a rock. Truckers essentially went on protest, mostly in the eastern portion of Canada, in the non-wildernessy version of Canada, and they went
Truckers rock, by the way. I just have to say, trucker. My dad was a trucker. Truckers rock.
So originally they went through what's the funding platform?
They went through GoFundMe.
Yeah, they went through
they had to
GoFundMe.
go through something different.
They got shut down by the government. And then they went through Give, Send, Go.
Yes.
But they also received a bunch of donations in Bitcoin and other cryptos into either exchanges or wallets.
But their bank accounts got stopped.
Well, so let's kick it to you, Scott. So they get these donations in terms of crypto and stuff. What went awry with that?
Yeah, so they can't actually like take your crypto, but what they were doing essentially is they were getting your address that you have your Bitcoin on, and they were blacklisting it. So if you then sent that to an exchange, the exchange would just confiscate it from you and then, give it to the government or whatever. So the idea was that they were just using, like, I would say lawfare, like legal warfare on the exchanges to force them to comply. But, even like the CEO of Kraken, for example, like a lot of people from the exchanges were saying, yeah, no, if you're doing this, like, don't leave your crypto on our exchange because we're going to have to comply. So just do not do that. There's many ways that you can get your crypto and spend it or get it out or, withdraw it through like a Bitcoin ATM or whatever. But yeah, so the big issue was that they were just blacklisting your address. But there's so many ways to get around.
How did they get the address?
Hold on. Refresh my memory. So wasn't it the Kraken CEO that wrote the letter to Canada, the Canadian government, basically told him to go F himself? Was that Kraken?
Yeah.
Is that a fix?
But unfortunately, they still do have to comply with what they have on the exchange, unfortunately. But the beauty of that, though, is like you don't have to. Oh, and to answer your question, like how do they have your address? They can. So everything on Bitcoin is public, so they can see who sent to the donation wallet, and then they just blacklist all those addresses. So if those
But that's
addresses then
not all
sent to an
crypto, right?
exchange,
Is that all
no,
crypto?
that's just
Okay.
Bitcoin. And I
Okay.
mean, there's many cryptocurrencies that are public, and then you've got privacy coins like Monero, and there's a lot of different ways that crypto works. But Bitcoin, as an example, is public, so they are able to generally trace that. But the average person isn't really going to be able to know what's going on. It's only if someone who's actually like doing some deep diving into all the different transactions
Almost
and
feels
tracing it.
like it almost feels like crypto is like artistic.
What?
As you talk about it, yeah, it feels like it's artistic in the sense that like there's so many like avenues and areas to go in and like ways to like because it's not if it's not Bitcoin, it could be like you talk about that ARG and that like the Hive, and there's so
Oh.
many different ways to develop. Not that the actual coin itself or whatever is artistic, but like you can create an avenue in different ways.
Well, so the beauty of, and you can talk to this too if you want, Scott. The beauty from my perspective is there's Web 1.0, Web 2.0, and Web 3.0, and crypto is kind of evolving along with some of that web technology that's happening. And so a lot of that e-commerce that's happening, you're right. In the past, there were these kind of like centralized bottlenecks or, gatekeepers that essentially said that, oh, you can go this way, but you can't go that way. And so crypto helps you kind of break down some of those things. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, would you call it the Wild West? I mean, there's literally an infinite number of possibilities for people to take this as long as they're willing to invest their time and maybe a little money and effort, right?
Yeah, it's good and it's bad that it's the crypto Wild West because some people have no idea what's going on. They're investing in like random coins, losing all their money. And like going back to what you were saying before, some regulation can be good. Most is probably not going to be good.
Yep.
They just recently passed something like here in Canada where, in terms of your taxes, you can only invest like $30,000 into altcoins. So anything other than Ethereum or Bitcoin.
What?
Which is good for Ethereum and Bitcoin because then people
But
are like,
how do
okay,
they
if I'm going to
know?
invest money, well, if you're going to claim your taxes, if you do any more than 30,000 on Doge, then they're going to say, well, no, like, or we're going to fine you or whatever. Because I assume as crypto was going up, they're like, this is going to be great. We're going to tax them. We're going to make so much money. Crypto crashes. Everyone's claiming like insane losses. And the government's like, okay, wait, this isn't working.
This doesn't work.
So now they're like, okay, you can only invest so much in Doge and all these other coins.
Coming from the perspective I'm coming from, like I'm like, that's karma, bitch.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I got really unlucky back in the day, and I had about 110,000 Doge on Cryptopia, and the exchange went bankrupt, and then I couldn't get my Doge out, and then Doge went to like 95 cents Canadian, so that would have been over 100 grand I would have had. But hard lesson learned that you do not leave your crypto on exchanges. So
didn't Elon Musk talk about Doge? I don't know. I know more than I know.
Oh, he loves Doge.
So be as discerning as you want to be. What's your opinion on Elon? Do you think he's this like futurist like soothsayer that everyone thinks he is, or do you think there's some nefarious?
I think he's really good at staying in the public eye and marketing himself. Basically, like Kanye a few years ago, before Kanye like kind of went off the rails. I would say he's just really good at marketing himself and just always staying in the public eye. Like he's always on the next thing. And I mean, like the Twitter deal, for example, like he managed to gain more followers than the creator of Twitter in like 2 months. I think more than double his followers in 2 months with this Twitter deal, which is just insane, right? Like Jack Dorsey has like 7 or 8 million, and Elon Musk got an extra like 22 million or something like that in like 2 months. So, he's just like really good at marketing himself. I don't know if he ever really intended to buy Twitter. Maybe it was to expose the bots. But it's I don't think he's that serious about Doge either. I think he just thinks it's like funny.
Yeah.
But the problem is like Doge is not really that good. I mean, like the creators of Doge sold all their Doge like right away. The one guy made like 10 grand, bought like a Honda Civic or something. Yeah, like it was nothing fancy. It took them, I think, like 3 hours to make it. It was a joke, and then people just kind of ran with it. The big problem I see with Doge is like people say, yeah, but it's way faster than Bitcoin and it's way cheaper to send. And this is cash. And I'm like, okay, but Bitcoin, while it was trying to be cash originally, it's more so gold.
Yeah.
So I would compare it to Bitcoin Cash or Dash, and they're infinitely cheaper and faster than Doge. So it doesn't really hold up when you're actually comparing it to apples.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between crypto and what is that thing where you were trying to talk to me about, like the art that gets put on an
NFT?
Oh, no. So you're talking about, so
is that not crypto?
She's asking about NFTs. So
NFT, is that not crypto?
So NFTs are something that's built off of essentially crypto as a backbone.
What's the difference?
Go ahead, Scott. I'll let you entertain that one.
Yeah, so Ethereum originally created ERC20 tokens, so they allowed people to build their own mini cryptos or like tokens on their network, so people could create their own. Then beyond that, once they realized how successful that was, they created ERC 721, which allowed people to create non-fungible tokens, which is similar, but it's very different as well. Essentially, it's like you're creating some sort of unique item, I guess I would say, like a unique asset that isn't like, there's no other assets that are the exact same. So for example, like a piece of art or trading cards, collectibles essentially is like one of the main use cases. There's many use cases, but the most common well-known thing is people create collectibles with it. And the idea is that you have true ownership of the collectible online, like as a digital item. So it's like you have Pokemon cards, but instead of Pokemon cards, they're just digital cards. So it's the same general idea as like collectibles, but yeah, it's just on the blockchain. So it's easier to trade them, speculate, do all that kind of stuff.
Are you a fan of those?
Not really. I mean, it depends. Most I would say are just like celebrities cashing in on the hype.
That's how I felt recently.
Most of them lost value. Sometimes it's interesting, like what you can do. So, for example, another crypto creator, Joel Valenzuela, who's way more deep into crypto than I am. He doesn't even have a bank account. He's like as far as it gets for like living on crypto. He has an NFT that if you have the NFT, you can join his Discord, and then you can send in live chats for his streams for free without having to like pay for a super chat because you've bought the NFT. So that's like a more interesting use case. And I'm sure in the future, we'll see much more interesting ways that it's being used. Like, for example, you go to an event and they give you an NFT that proves that you went to the event. And then next year you want to pay for the ticket and they check if you have the NFT and then they give you a 10% discount or something like that. So there's loyalty NFTs.
It's like ticket stubs from the 90s. And the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. So there's innovative ways that they're coming up with now, and I think it's getting more legitimate. But for a long time, it was just celebrities were like, oh, like I can get $1 million from my fans if I just tell them to all buy this, and they'll probably all lose their money, but I'll get a bunch of money, and that's unfortunately what I've mostly seen. And yeah, I would say the NFT mark.
Do you think some of those like I mean, the early stages of crypto, like with a lot of technologies, has a lot of these kind of like pump and dump scams and things like that come out. Do you think
I'd say it's mostly
undermines the faith or the interest in it?
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing that I think is like the worst thing that I see happening is people get into crypto, they spend all their money on something, they have no idea what it is. It does very poorly, and then they're like, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to touch crypto again. And it's really just because they had no idea what they're doing. But it would be the same thing if you started investing in stocks and you put all your money into one penny stock and then it went to zero. So it's really just people need a little bit more like education when they start, and like they need to take it a little bit slower, I guess. Because when people get into crypto, because the big craze right now is NFTs, everyone wants to buy NFTs. And I say, okay, well, if you just started investing in stocks, you wouldn't start like buying fine art for like hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever. You have to kind of pace yourself with your level of wealth. Like you shouldn't be investing all of your money into one piece of art because, you know, you have no idea what art is good and what it, I mean, maybe if you're actually like in that field, but most people are just jumping in. They have no idea what's going on, and
Well, they
they're
should
just
just
throwing
buy
money
what
at the
makes
wall.
them feel good.
Yep.
They should just buy what they look at and they're happy.
Hold on.
And they're like, oh, I love this.
Yeah, well, your favorite influencer might drop something and you think it's really cool, but they're just kind of like grifting their audience, and that's kind of the problem.
Yeah.
The difference is you're talking about like you see like a $300 or $500 piece of art in the wall and you're like, oh, that speaks to me, like I'll buy that. There were people that were dumping tens of thousands of dollars into NFTs for, you know,
trying to make money,
monkey pictures and stuff like that, thinking that they were going to the moon, you know.
And beyond that, there's a lot of like centralized NFT platforms that make it even worse. And I think the most egregious one that I've repeatedly like railed against is Vivi and the OMI token, because it's probably one of the biggest centralized NFT exchanges or marketplaces rather. And the big problem there is like you need $1,000 to withdraw. So if you're like a small time investor, it's gonna be really hard for you to actually get your money back. And there's like a whole slew of problems. Like it's centralized through the App Store. So if Google or Apple wants to just shut it down, like it's pretty much done. Lots of problems there. If you're gonna buy NFTs, you have to do it in a decentralized way, like on OpenSea or some sort of decentralized marketplace.
Yeah. All right. So let me take a step back because we had mentioned Doge before we got on NFTs.
Wait, I still didn't remember the Canadian. What happened? Did they had their stuff taken? Like they got their addresses taken, but were they ever given back? Like, did anything ever happen with that?
So nothing was taken per se. It was
just
like
kind of frozen.
Well, not even that. So the beauty of Bitcoin is like no one can take it away or stop you from doing anything, but they can mark your address. Like they would say like Scott is blacklisted. So if Scott tries to do anything with his wallet that we know about, we're going to try to stop that. So they just tell all the exchanges in Canada, if Scott, you know, gets on your exchange, I KYC, I send from my address, they're going to know it's me, and they're going to be like, okay, we're going to take his money and hold it. And the government can do what they want to do. But there's so many ways to get around that if you know what you're doing. But if you're very new to crypto and you're like, oh, I'll send some Bitcoin, and then you get blacklisted, you're probably going to have some problems. But it's definitely better than if you donated with your bank account. Your bank account's frozen. There's nothing you can really do there. So that's kind of one of the good things about crypto.
Did they ever unblacklist everybody who was in the who that happened to?
That I'm not sure about, but that is something I should definitely check out. But I mean, feel like they're not going to announce to everyone, oh, we're going to let them go now. But, you know,
you're wrong.
If they didn't, I mean, like, I wouldn't tell them to do this because it would probably be, you know, sorted and goes against the government's wishes. But if they wanted to use a VPN and Tor and go to an exchange like KuCoin, they might be able to get an anonymous exchange account and then move their coins into something else in order to get them out of the wallet. But, you know, they shouldn't do that because that's probably not a good idea.
That all went right over my head.
So anyway, now that I'm also on a Canadian intelligence agency watch list after giving that answer, let me ask about Luna. So a number of tokens have seen dramatic fall offs in their value. One of which, the most prolific, was Luna, because Luna is essentially tied at the hip with Tether, right? Which was essentially
with UST, not Tether.
UST. And so being in that kind of like stable coin arena, one of the professed stalwarts of crypto was, oh, well, even if all of the shit coins go down and even if Bitcoin goes down dramatically and stuff like that, people can always keep their money in the ecosystem because they can just shift their value from Bitcoin into these stable coins. And for your reference, stable coins are coins that are supposed to be pegged to something. So like the dollar or the Canadian dollar or something like that, right? So it's supposed to maintain its exchange rate there. And so you always have kind of like this safe haven to run to, so to speak. And Luna fell off the map, and essentially there's literally like 1 trillion
So it was supposed to be
coins
safe.
out there now.
It was supposed to be safe.
Well, it went hand in hand with this stable coin that was kind of like a partner within that ecosystem. Can you just explain that dynamic? Like, why is it that rug pull happened with Luna? Because that was one of the, I'm like, Terra, / Luna was one of the most prolific risers of the altcoins outside of the Bitcoin and Ethereum.
With a cool name.
Yeah.
I would have bought
nice.
it just for the name.
Yeah. I think a lot of people did.
That's what I'm saying. Wine for labels, like crypto labels and,
No, do not buy your crypto by labels.
Crypto by name? I don't know.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Scott. I mean, actually, there's like 30 that just came out like the other day, like God Save the Queen, Queen Elizabeth token, all that kind of stuff. People trying to cash in. If you really loved the Queen, you got to buy this token. So, but yeah, no, with Luna, I mean, I just recently did a 5-part series on stablecoins. One of them was covering algorithmic stablecoins, which is Luna. Mm-hmm. The big problem with that is pretty much all algorithmic stablecoins fail, by the way. Okay. And it's a stablecoin that isn't actually backed by anything. So Tether is supposed to be backed by reserves of actual, however many Tether there are, there's supposed to be that much US dollars stored away somewhere in the equal amount, and they're making money off of transaction fees. The problem with algorithmic stablecoins is there is nothing actually backing them aside from the coin that they're tied to and community incentive to switch between them, because people can make money by switching from UST to Luna and then Luna to UST when the value is not. So for example, like if the value was $1.01, people might start minting over because they'll make a tiny profit. Right. Or if it's 99 cents, they might mint the other way to make a tiny profit. The idea there is it's all just based on the community keeping it going. If that ever doesn't, if it's not working anymore, the whole thing collapses. And every algorithmic stablecoin pretty much has failed. Hive backed dollars is still good. I mean, there's some that are still good because they have all these different policies in place, but generally algorithmic stablecoins fail. The other really big one a year or two ago, Mark Cuban came out and promoted and endorsed Iron or Titan by Iron Finance, and that just plummeted like a couple days after in the exact same way, like $60 to 0.00001. Pretty much the same thing that happened with Luna. And pretty much all algorithmic stablecoins fail. Every stablecoin has its nuance of like why it's not really that good. Like with Tether and these really centralized ones, they have total control where they can freeze your wallet, do everything that the banks could do. They can revert transactions. They can do anything. The only good thing about that is if there's a hack, if something bad happens, they can just undo it all and just make everything good again. Right. But the problem is Tether has the most banned addresses, the most like blacklisted addresses. So like they have no issue with going after people or kicking people off of the system. And each coin has its own like pitfalls. Like even DAI, which is supposed to be a more decentralized crypto-backed stablecoin, it's 52% backed by USDC, Coinbase's stablecoin. So it's centralized anyways through what Coinbase is doing. So there's really no easy way to get away from the pitfalls of stablecoins. And after my 5-part series, I've basically decided that I don't think any stablecoins are trustworthy, and I wrote them all off.
Yeah.
You just have to create your own sexy coin.
Sexy coin.
I think that's what it is. I think it's like to create your own. No, I mean, I was just thinking while you were talking about that, and you were just talking about stable coins, and I don't even know how many coins. I mean, honestly, how many coins are out there? Like, if you had to, like,
I couldn't even tell you. There's so many.
Like, is there like 10,000 or is there like 1 million? Like, I mean, like,
It's
Like,
really
this
hard
is-
to say because like it depends if you consider a coin like legitimate or not. Because like I could go and create like 100 coins on Bitcoin Cash in like tonight. Like it wouldn't be that hard.
And
Like
people
I
could do that
created
all over the world.
exactly some
God.
like Ethereum. It's harder to create versus like Bitcoin Cash tokens. But you know, there's varying levels of difficulty and how much time and effort you're going to put into it, and transaction fees and all these different nuances. But yeah, there's definitely a lot. It's just if they're actually being tracked and like, you know, if people are actually paying attention, it's hard to know if they really exist if no one's, you know, said anything
Yeah.
about it, or if it's not like listed somewhere. It's hard to know exactly how many are out there, but there is a lot, like probably in the millions by this time.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So this is the thing though. I'm Gen X.
Yeah.
And I know people before me. I am having a hard time grasping it and what the heck it is. I mean, I get it, but I don't. Like, I can get it on a mental level, but then you think, okay, but money is something like, well, we have this sense of money, right? And money is something that's you survive on, right? I'm not saying this is necessarily the correct way to look at it,
Mhm.
right? But money is something you survive on. And for like people like Gen X and previously, like to throw that on its head and be like, okay, but data and work and all this stuff, like internet kind of based information, it's not in the same way mentally appropriate for money. Like I can't explain it, but like it's always going to be hard for Gen Xers. I think, and beyond, like baby boomers and like I think
No, that's
because
it's
we
for
didn't grow
sure
up with
because
it. Like
it's
I grew up with
yeah.
like a beeper,
I think
like
that's
and payphones.
I think that's the single hardest, the single biggest hurdle for the Fed to get over. To
Well, they're
release a
all old
central,
people.
well, to release a central bank digital currency, right? I think, look, like especially in the United States, senior citizens vote, right? Like they show up, they vote, and so the political landscape very much is
They don't
determined
want a
by
digital
a lot of you know the direction they want to go in and they don't want to go in. Central bank digital currency has a similar, I think, hurdle
Yeah.
to get over. I think what you're talking about is just the
vastness of it.
no, I think you're talking about the brand equity that dollars and fiat currency have
It
built
doesn't,
up.
yeah. But
Okay.
also the fact that there could be millions of crypto coins, like to
it's more
But
akin
think
to like
about it.
stocks. Like there's millions of penny stocks that no one has ever heard of or will ever hear about.
Yeah.
But it's just the ones that actually matter, the blue chip stocks, Apple, Microsoft. That's like Bitcoin, Ethereum. That's what I would like akin it to. And the big difference with crypto is you can spend the stock at places that accept it versus just having the stock and it can't really do anything. You can stake the stock to earn more of the stock. Which would offer dividends in a sense, like crypto dividends. So it's very similar to the stock market, but there's just more functionality built into it. And I think when people look at it through that lens, it's a lot more
that makes
easy
sense.
to understand and like get
But
started
again,
with it.
Gen X, I'm like more likely to bury my money in the backyard
Yeah, but here's
than give it to anybody.
so here's the difference, and this is something that we've talked about. We've talked about
he's tried to change my mind.
no. We've talked about I'm not just talking about crypto specifically, but we've talked about global de-dollarization. We've talked about a loss of faith in the fiat and fractional reserve banking system. We've talked about a lot of this stuff, and so I think what typically happens with any other type of reserve currency throughout the world or major kind of currency is you're essentially Bitcoin and Ethereum and the other blue chip cryptos are fighting for market share, essentially, like who's going to do business in Bitcoin versus who's going to continue to do business in yuan or dollars or Canadian dollars or euros or whatever, right? When people begin to lose faith in those other currencies, it's a gigantic opportunity for Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptos, because then it becomes something else that they might see the grass is greener on the other side of the fence as opposed to.
I have no doubt of the value that lives in crypto. Like, I don't have any doubt in that. But like, to me, for you to say it's like the stock market totally makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, I hadn't thought of that before. Like, I feel like people try to make it a currency, and I don't think of that. Like, when I think of stock markets, I don't think necessarily of currency. I know he's big into stock market, so I don't really get it. And I listen to some of the podcasts he listens to. But to me, like if you say it as a stock market, now I understand it. Whereas if I think of it as a currency that everyone uses, I can't understand it in that way. Even though I know currency is on the stock market.
How would you explain that difference, Scott? The difference between, I mean, like they call it cryptocurrency, right?
Mhm.
So how would you explain that difference between someone who says, okay, well, if it is more like the stock market than it is like currency, it's riskier. Why would I put my money there? Why would I get paid in it? This, that, and the other thing. Like, how would you kind of like either assuage their fears or just kind of tell them why cryptocurrency is a more competitive place for them to kind of put their time and their energy and their assets versus say fiat.
Yeah, and to answer that, I would kind of go back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Like, gold is very, very useful, but there's limitations. Like, if I want to get rid of all my gold and move tomorrow, that's going to be very challenging. But I could sell all my Bitcoin today, or I could bring it with me. It's just building on some of those limitations. But answering your question about how I differentiate it between the stock market, like I said, it's kind of like the stock market, but you can spend your stocks and you can do more with the stock, and it's actually like yours. So for example, um, you know, Justin Trudeau was freezing bank accounts. So if you had a stock account on with your bank account, a lot of that was at risk. When the stuff started happening in Ukraine, you couldn't trade Russian stocks. If you had Russian stocks, you're pretty much screwed. The difference with crypto is that no one's going to be able to just like stop you from trading your Bitcoin or whatever, regardless of what's happening around the world, and no one's going to freeze it. They might try to blacklist it, but they can't actually take it from you. Or it's really solving the problem of centralized finance. And I say
And that
a lot
shit
of
sucks.
the yeah, and a lot of the
100%.
motivations for cryptocurrency is just understanding how bad the current financial system is with centralized finance. And only when you see that problem do you see the need for a solution, which is decentralized finance. And until you see that problem or recognize that problem, you won't see the need for that solution. But once people understand that, they say, okay, what is the solution? The main solution we have right now is cryptocurrency. And that's what people are generally going to. Maybe there'll be something else in the future. But right now, that's kind of the only easy decentralized solution to a lot of these centralized problems with finance.
I'm totally there too. And I get it. It's like, I'm just trying to say, as like a Gen X, like someone who's 45, who like worked on payphones, who did not get the internet until I was in college, right? Like to me, like it's just crazy to think about. Like, what the fuck is it?
When your
like,
cell
I
phone,
can't picture it. Like I can hold a dollar, right? Like I can say, okay, this dollar, I can go in that store and I know everybody there says how much of this dollar they need or how many dollars they need. But when you say crypto, I'm like, fuck, I just go into my own little crazy mind.
when your cell phone buzzes in your pocket, do you think it's your pager and it's like your friend that
Let
says
me
like
know.
911?
Every
Like...
done did 80085, which was boobs.
Yeah.
Well, I think a good way.
I
think a good way to explain this.
I'm sure.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's go for it.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. A good way to explain this, I would say, is like gold is what like Gen X boomers might be more interested in because you can hold it. It's valuable. It's scarce. Yep. But it is harder for me to go to a store and say like, hey, can you like chip off a piece of this gold brick and like, can I spend this here? Or can I give you this gold brick and you've got a bunch of gold nuggets in the back that you can give me as change or whatever. So it's kind of solving that problem of like, how easy is it to actually use it and exchange it? And is it also still valuable? So it's that's, I keep going back to, it's like stocks that you can spend essentially, because there's value there, but you can also still use it to buy things. And I think a lot of the block is just like people think it's so
without a pawn store. P-A-W.
Yeah.
Pawn shop. Yeah.
Pawn
Yeah,
shop.
without having to go to like a pawn shop
You
or
almost said
go
porn.
to somewhere to like validate the gold.
You need
But,
dollars for a porn.
Hold on. I gotta tell you. What's interesting? So, like, you're like a tech nerd, right, Scott?
Yeah.
So
I went to school for networking and IT security.
Oh my
Okay.
God! See,
All right.
you're
So
Yeah.
so you know why Blu-ray versus HD DVDs, like why Blu-ray won out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the porn industry, right? So whenever the porn industry adopts a new technology, that's what makes it successful. It's the most.
because
And PayPal
Everybody
started
craves
banning
attention.
porn stars from accepting on PayPal, and then they were like, "Okay, I guess we gotta figure something else." But
when
yeah, I would
OnlyFans
like
switches to accepting
Yeah.
tips
Crypto.
in Bitcoin Cash or something like that,
yeah, there you go. Boom. OnlyFans.
it's gone.
absolutely.
No,
I mean, there's a
love
lot of
even-
coins like sex coin and all those kind of things, but they don't really do that well because it's hard to trust that they're like not sketchy.
Well,
Yeah.
'cause it's a skeezy kind of
But like
feel.
a lot of the times, the way that I would explain for people who are having trouble like understanding blockchain and crypto is most people, like, because I studied networking and IT security, I'd say like 99% of people have no idea how the internet actually works.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
they
yeah.
need to understand is how to use it. And it's the same with crypto. You don't need to understand like how the blocks connect to the chain. Like most people trip up with like mining, how mining works and what it really means. And it's like none of that is relevant because most people have no idea how IP addresses work or how a DNS server works. They just know if I type in on my URL and I go to this website, it works. So all you really need to know is how to use the thing. You don't need to understand the intricacies. In the same way that if I drive a car, I don't know everything about engine combustion. I just need to understand how to drive it and use it rather than how it works and all the
So
intricacies.
funny that you brought that up because I just saw this 90s thing. It was like, I'm so from the 80s and 90s. And I just saw a meme and a video that was like the car manual from the 80s and 90s was like how to change your oil. And the car manual now is like, what the button means. but you're basically saying trust us. And Gen X doesn't trust anybody. So that's a problem.
And that's where that brand equity comes in, right? Like Gen X and specifically baby boomers have
I don't want to speak for a whole generation.
brand equity. Well, yes, yeah. I'm like no one nominated.
I don't trust anybody. It's just me.
No, there's the name recognition and I have to do some research on this. Is there any cryptocurrency out there that's backed by gold?
I thought you were going to say
Yes.
Gen X.
So there are several. The big issue is you run into a lot of different issues. So I covered this in my stablecoin series, covering like the gold-backed coins. The issue with a lot of them is you still have to trust some centralized entity to hold it, store it, that they're not going to do something like malicious.
Right.
So you run into a lot of the same issues, right? You still need like a bank to control the gold and do all that. So you run into a lot of the same issues, and you're better off just actually owning gold or just having crypto because you're not going to run, because there's also low liquidity and there's not a lot of people trading it and using it. So, there's risks there where it's like, if I go to sell it, are people going to want to buy it from me and things like that. So,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say like I kind of just avoid all stable coins at this point. As much as I would love for that to be a reality, I've kind of gone through and tried everything, and at the end of the day, a lot of stable coins just don't cut it.
Yeah. High back dollars is an interesting use case because they've definitely held up better than a lot of the other stable coins that are either in existence or have existed. A lot of that has
at least algorithmic stablecoins, because
yes.
I would point out that like USDT, like Tether and like Coinbase, they're pretty much always $1, whereas like algorithmic stablecoins will kind of move up and down a little bit. But again, we talked about like Tether can just control your money, they can freeze it, they can do whatever they want, whereas like high back dollars are decentralized, so you don't have those issues, but you have the concerns around like if the community doesn't keep supporting it and like it's not able to hold its peg. That's my concern. Personally, I sold out most of my HBD after I did all my research on stablecoins, and I was just like, I just don't want anything to do with stablecoins. I still like Hive, I like HBD, but I'm just so skeptical of stable coins across the board now, and pretty much all algorithmic coins fail. I'm just really skeptical of the whole
The
thing.
algorithmic coins, but by that you mean the coins that run off an algorithm?
Well, yeah, no, they require basically people exchanging back and forth with the coins.
In order for it to build.
Yeah,
potential.
it needs people to continue to arbitrage that difference in value. If they stop
So
arbitraging that difference,
there's
in
nothing
value,
actually backing it. Like there's no dollars set aside.
Yeah.
Like with Tether, if there's a billion Tether, there's supposed to be $1 billion set aside, exact value 1-to-1.
Yeah.
But with like algorithmic stablecoins, there's nothing set aside to actually keep its value. You're just relying on the community to do that, and that's hard to do. I mean, you have to kind of trust that it's going to keep going. But
what's
like
super
you were
interesting
saying before.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but what's super interesting with
Yeah,
high back dollars, and not to say that you were, you can make your decisions with your own money and stuff like that. I still hold some HBD because they did go to a staking basically a situation where they're paying 20% APR, right? And initially I was like, this is unsustainable. Like all the stable coins I've seen that have promised even 8%
Luna
have all kind of like fallen back on this, right?
Luna did 20%.
Yeah, the one thing that sold me on it,
scared me.
the one thing that sold me on at least keeping a portion of my wallet in HBD was Hive has this unique situation where it's not nearly as liquid as all of the other coins. And so there are a lot of these kind of like stopgaps that stop these huge inflows and outflows. So like the bank run on Hive can't happen in a day or an hour, right? Like it happens over weeks, right? And so there's time there where people can kind of like come back to their senses and maybe actually arbitrage some of these imbalances, right? But that being said, I see what you say. Like I would say that for anyone who's in your situation or my situation, or anyone who's not all in on crypto, or even young and has a long runway to kind of figure this stuff out, you don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? I'm like, you're a walking embodiment of that, Scott. I'm like,
50
being on 50 different platforms.
Yeah, you do it.
I
can't even. I started on Hive and I gave one post, and that was 8 months ago. Today I was like, I should go on Hive.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, that was 8 months ago.
It's really tough. Do you find yourself battling that, where especially with these Web 3.0 projects, where they're blogging sites or they're kind of like social media based or video based? Do you find it really hard to kind of like gravitate through those? I mean, it's really difficult. And like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, they just have such a stranglehold on kind of like attention and the volume of people that are using them. What have you seen as far as like the uptake in usage on some of those platforms?
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is, like, sometimes when a platform starts doing really well, they kind of like gravitate away from the crypto aspect and they kind of become more corporate. I would say personally, I feel that way about like Odyssey and Library. I don't feel like they're really that true to like blockchain values anymore, but like it's really hard to say. Like, I mean, everything is growing, but they're competing with like all the big networks, and it's really just people aren't realizing that they can like get value out of the things that they're already doing on social if they were posting it on Hive or wherever else. And there is some like learning curve to using these platforms. But like that's kind of why I like to do like tutorials and teach people about how to actually use these platforms like Hive, for example, because it is so hard to get started. But you can earn a lot, and I've kind of showed that over the last like 3 years of reporting my earnings every single month and tracking all of that. But yeah, it's really hard to say because sometimes the platforms go down or they're a scam, or there's so many different things that can happen.
I have to say two things. First of all, this one over here got me on Hive, but I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And I don't know why he didn't send me your videos. Because now tomorrow. So wait, can you just say again where you have your videos? Because I'm going to go look. I'm going to watch this tomorrow.
Yeah, pretty much everywhere. But yeah, if you just want to watch it on YouTube or wherever is easiest, I have like a 50-minute breakdown of like every aspect of Hive, including some of the extra like platforms like 3Speak and staking.
I have been
and all that
asking
kind of
him to
stuff.
get me on 3Speak for like forever. This is what I'm gonna do. Tomorrow I'm gonna watch your videos.
Hold on, this is a very important part. You realize this show gets uploaded to 3Speak every week.
I know. I don't do any of it.
So technically you are.
I teach creative writing, my friend Scott.
Yeah.
I teach creative writing.
Well, there's a lot of
teach
blogging
movies,
platforms
but I don't
too,
do
so.
anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna watch your video tomorrow because he has had me on Hive, and I'm like, every time I go on there, I'm like, what the fuck should I tag? I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, and then I immediately get turned off, and I go upstairs, and I'm like, I have 3 kids to take care of. Like, that's what happens. But I love it.
You should have seen what the UI was like, what the user interface was like on Hive, like 2 years ago. It was way worse than.
I'm getting better though. I want to do it, and this one has not given me.
It's a growing
platform. I need to look at it tomorrow.
It's a growing platform. You should definitely watch Scott's walkthrough.
Gonna watch it on YouTube tomorrow, and then also, here's a question. Matt and I were talking about this today. I was saying that in a way, I don't know if crypto is like bartering. It's probably not like bartering, but we were talking about the idea of bartering, right? Like service for service, right? Weren't we talking about that today? And I had told him, they tried to do like a service for service on my holistic group, and it didn't work because the person who gave massage service thought they required more than getting elderberry syrup. Which required more than like the free class from something, like it's all, And so I understand the need for crypto, but what is your feeling on bartering and like that whole idea of bartering within a community?
So that's a really good question, because a lot of the issues in traditional finance is that you have to trust the other person that you're interacting with, or you have to trust a third party to manage, whatever's going on between you two. The thing with crypto is it's trying to create a trustless solution. So for example, with a smart contract, I put my money in the contract, they put their money in the contract, and then once we've both fulfilled our sides of the agreement, it'll send the crypto to each other, and there's no bank holding it in the middle or lawyer or whatever to do that transaction. Whereas previously, I don't know, like in a video game, for example, that doesn't have NFTs yet, say like World of Warcraft, you've got an item, you want to sell it to someone, you just have to trust and hope that they're going to actually pay you and you're going to give them the item. But in the future, if all items in video games were NFTs, you could do trustless interactions where you could do it in a smart contract, and there would be no issues of like, oh, are they going to actually send the money? Am I actually going to get the item that I'm trying to buy? So that's kind of the main thing that crypto is trying to solve. It's trying to make everything trustless, so you don't have to worry about trusting, is the other person actually going to follow
like all
through,
of a sudden they're going to pull out. Like they're just,
yeah.
It's so funny too, because when you said trustless, at first I was like, yeah, you have to trust that like the massage I give you is going to be awesome. But I'm sorry, I'm totally not in crypto stock mind, but I feel like I honestly, like after having this whole conversation, I do feel there's something artistic about it. There's something beautiful about it. And to be artistic, all you have to see is to have a vision and be beautiful in its own way. And nasty ass shit.
Well, no, I mean, to a certain extent, it's
a
blank canvas, right? It's just the canvas is maybe you don't use paint, right? Like you're using code or something, right?
Yeah, many people would say like the Bitcoin code is art, and people will like frame it and hang it up and stuff. And it's like it's a beautiful piece of code, and it is a creative way to solve problems with finance, and it's using creativity to do that.
And fuck the government.
Yeah.
Right? Like, fuck the fucking government.
No, I mean, like,
really? Are you gonna make up for me?
Dude, you went from
the government loves me.
Dude, you went from kind of like, we need a little bit of government and stuff like that to have the government in like a couple of years.
When have I ever said I needed government?
You were.
Listen,
we'll discuss that later.
Vaccinate. We homeschool. We don't need government in that way. They're actually paving our street this week. which I was like, wow, I've been here since 1983 and they've never paved it, but now I can't park on the street tomorrow. And I'm like, am I going to be able to leave my fucking home? No, like, I don't even know. I didn't vote for it. There was no check mark.
I don't know if crypto can solve that immediately.
Totally random thought. I'm sorry.
And I can commiserate with you, Scott. I've spent many an hour sitting at the bank on World of Warcraft or EverQuest, hoping that the person shows up with my item that I paid fiat money for on eBay. But
oh my God, you were like World of Warcraft.
Yes, I was a giant nerd. So anyway, I want to ask you kind of like one final question. It's kind of like a prognostication question, right? Like, if you could bet money on it, or if you were going to kind of like try and look into your crystal ball, where do you think crypto goes in the future? Like, do you think it becomes this, juggernaut that, the Gen Xers and the Boomers that are so attached
will they
to
ever
fiat
understand it
and gold and stuff like that? No, when
you don't need to. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
but
you don't need to. I heard that before.
But will the Gen Zers and the millennials and the younger generations, will crypto be their default, right? Like, will they move to that, or do you think something else takes its place, or do you think it's like a little bit of everything, like a Heinz 57?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if you're trying to be the best prepared for any situation, you want to have a little bit of everything to, spread out your risk. But yeah, I think the way that people are going, everyone's like living digitally. I mean, hopefully we're not all like plugged into the metaverse in the future. But I do see a crypto future, which it makes a lot of sense. I mean, here in Canada, we're actually one of the most cashless societies, like countries on earth. And I think the more cashless a society is, the more likely they're going to easily adopt crypto, because that's already kind of what people are doing. And I mean, as people see more issues with inflation, all these problems with like the traditional system, it's going to become more and more apparent that crypto is the only solution. And I think it's just going to slowly but surely kind of take over. And I mean, we're still early, as people like to keep saying. It's like 20-30% of people have adopted crypto. There's still so much more room to go. And I mean, it's taking over. I mean, 2 months ago, the Bank of International Settlements said that all banks around the world can now hold 1% of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies in their reserves. In my video talking about this, I said, if we just looked at the top 15 banks in the world, if they all did 1% of Bitcoin reserves, that would be all the rest of the Bitcoin that's on exchanges. And that would just skyrocket Bitcoin. It would be insane. But I do expect a lot more people to be adopting crypto. I've always said that I think it's going to be through social media platforms, and that's why I do a lot of what I do. But it'll also be through video games once they actually start adopting NFTs, and that actually really gets going, because that's going to take over. If all Fortnite skins are an NFT, kids are going to be growing up on crypto.
That's the next generation.
Yeah, that's how it'll really take over. It'll start with the next generation, and then they'll just grow up on it.
Pagers to cell phones.
Well,
That's what it is.
I'm like, it might be, I'm right on that verge between millennial and Gen X. And this might be kind of the older Gen X in me. I actually like the less sexy ideas of, smart contracts taking over traditional financial transactions, like, not necessarily having to have a paper title for your house or your property anymore, right?
Well, you don't have to pay a realtor their fees. You could just do it all through a smart contract, right? The whole idea of trustless solutions for any financial transaction of any kind.
I think the beautiful thing of it, and it really is that decentralization, is to like have those transactions with your neighbors, like, and that people can create these things and you can give to somebody without having someone else with their hand in that situation. I know it sounds weird, like, as I say it, but like there's something I keep going back to this artistic, like, whatever you're saying. I've never thought of it like this before, but I'm an artist. But what I keep going back to is it's really like a beautiful individual freedom. And and the fact that there's millions of Bitcoins, I mean, at some point, I imagine it has to funnel down. And the fact that it's worldwide is so fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, like, having some kind of currency that like goes across the world. I mean, like, that's fucking beautiful.
You're thinking
And
about creating a hippie commune that runs off of cryptocurrency,
I
aren't you?
love hippie communes.
We could get all the, we
And I
could
just
get
want to
into
be the
DAOs
person doing the meditation.
And it's funny because you were mentioning earlier, like, I don't know if we'd ever have, roads being paved by crypto or whatever, but, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, you could do so many different things where people in a neighborhood could put a little bit of money into a DAO and then vote on what they want to do with that money. And, that could actually be a way that people do things. Although I'll say a lot of DAOs are kind of not truly decentralized. So that's kind of like a double-edged sword, but, the idea is good. The concept is good.
Yeah, I find it interesting with the DAOs that
Wait a minute, DAO. When you say DAO,
DAO, decentralized
not
autonomous
DOW.
organization. No,
Okay.
not
No.
Dow Jones.
AO.
Yeah, no, it's meant to be essentially kind of like a spontaneous organization of individuals that come together for a purpose, right? Sometimes they bid on
So it could be like
a piece of art.
neighbors.
Sometimes I actually find it interesting that the DAOs, a lot of what gets most of the press nowadays, is essentially analogous to private equity, right? Like a lot of DAOs are used the way a private equity firm would be used. I also like the democratization of a lot of things that kind of like the everyday person has been locked out of. Whether you talk about DAOs, you talk about DeFi, the average Joe plumber is not getting involved in investment banking, right? Like they don't have money with JP Morgan that's going in for, takeover of a company to reform it and then spit it back out again. But in the DeFi world, you kind of can have a hand in the investment banking, quote unquote, sector of crypto, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
Because all the plumbers could get together and form their own DAO, and then they could put money into it and then vote what they want to do. So
yeah, I love that aspect of it. I mean, it's a way
It's
of
kind of commune.
DeFi. I've said it before.
in a way,
DeFi is a way of opening the IPO market to what normally would be retail investors that might maybe make a little bit of the remnant profit at the end after a stock or a company or an asset goes public, right? Whereas most of the profit that's made on the front end is made up by the investment bank and other people that are involved in it. Now you actually get in at the ground floor, right? Like you could be the person who's technically the angel investor for an idea, right? We were talking about Mark Cuban before. Like you wouldn't need Mark Cuban, right? You would need a bunch of people. You would need 100 people that are 1/100th of Mark Cuban to make those things happen, which I think is an absolutely fantastic idea.
Can I ask you, so what the hell brought you to crypto?
That's
Like,
an
was it
interesting
your
question.
education or was it like a fucked up situation? Not
Yeah, so
fucked up situations bring you to these things, but sometimes they do.
yeah, so I mean, people were kind of kicking around the idea of Bitcoin when I was in university, but I'd never really got into it until after. And then I looked into it. I was like, okay, let's throw some money at this. And unfortunately, it was just before the big crash, so I lost most of my money. It went from like 19,000 to like 3,000, like Bitcoin at that time. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not very good at investing, but I was learning a lot about it, and I was like, I like the idea. I do social media marketing as like my day job, and I was like, how could this apply to what I do every day? And I found Steam It, which was like the original Hive, and I started posting on there. But I was like, this is so hard to use. There's no tutorials, so I started doing tutorials, and then I was like, okay, well, what else is there? I started finding all these other social media platforms, and then that's kind of what started my journey of just like exploring social platforms, finding out that you could earn money just by posting on them. And then I just, I kept going along that because I was like, a lot of people are going to be really hesitant to actually invest in this stuff because it's so complex and scary. But if you can earn it for free, people are going to be like, okay, well, I mean, if I have $50 that I get for free, I guess I can learn what this is or how to do this because it's free money, versus like asking me to put money in and then learn about all this complex stuff. That's why
And
I'm
then
very
take
into
all
the
your
idea of,
information, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then fucking, that's crazy, like Facebook.
Wait, from no.
No, I know that's not. I know that's not what he's talking about. But I'm saying like you're investing in a social media account,
I would say
and
that's
then fucking Facebook.
yeah,
is
yeah, but hold
shit.
on. That's a good question though. What do you think motivates people the most? Because I think adoption of Web 3.0.
I don't even know what you mean when you say Web
Wait,
3.0. I have no clue.
Like
Web-
platforms
Web-
like Hive.
yeah.
Okay.
So like a social media platform that's built with crypto is kind of like the incentive for posting and interacting. And stuff like
Okay.
that, right?
Okay.
Okay. So what do you think, Scott, is a better incentive for people to move to a platform like that? Because we saw a lot of the censorship and stuff like that
Oh, the
that has happened
censorship.
over the last even more than 2 years, like 3, 4, 5 years.
Mhm.
I mean, especially if you trace the rise of Trump and everything like that. You know, that you thought would have pushed people to a decentralized platform.
Well, they all
like,
went to Telegram.
well, but that's the thing. Like they
Mm.
went to some of these other platforms that they perceived as more decentralized, or actually they weren't even decentralized at all. They just had a different, monarch that was at the head of them.
I mean, the problem is I'm on all these like alternative social platforms too that don't have crypto, like Gab, Parler, Getter, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The issue there is like they're still just the same as Facebook, essentially. Like
Yeah.
It's just
they
a
still
different master
have
that
the
you serve,
right to
right?
Is
ban you.
Substack good?
It's really just I mean, Substack is a little different, but it's still like it's a different technology, I would say.
Yeah.
That's a more complex thing to get into. But like Gab or Parler or whatever, they still have the same thing. Like they can just ban you at any time, technically. They still have the ability to do all the same things. They're just trying to promise that they're not going to do those things. The difference with like Hive is no one really can do those things. It's
Yep.
you can't just get banned off of Hive or whatever. So they kind of solve a lot of those problems. The issue is it's harder to get started. It's more complex. So there's all these different nuances of what people are like willing to deal with. Because when crypto gets involved, if it's actually decentralized, it's gonna be way more complex. I think what's gonna bring people over, as I've said, is like you can earn money for posting
Oh
things.
yeah.
And like maybe people didn't realize, oh, my post on Facebook actually has value aside from the dopamine hit I get when someone likes it and I'm like, oh yay, I got
Or how
likes.
much money companies get for selling your fucking data. That's
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
But,
if people
yeah.
saw, if there was like I think this would be a great idea. If someone made an extension for your browser that like showed what your post would be valued at if you were paid for it and what Facebook is making, and then people go, oh, like I could have gotten $1 here, $1 here, and they're like, damn, like, how do we actually get that money? And then there's like a little link beside it that's like, go check out Hive, that you can get this here. So I think that would be a really cool way to like show people it's like you could be making money. Your content does have intrinsic value, but Facebook is getting it. With
Yeah.
crypto platforms, you are sharing that value with the platform or any other people on the platform. So you're actually getting that value that you're putting in your effort and you're getting a reward for it.
Yeah.
I've mentioned Hive to a few people, and every time I'm like, well, you can get crypto, they're like, what?
Yeah.
But so let me ask you, is it just what's your favorite like all social media kind of website? Is it Hive?
It is Hive. I know it's more complex, but when you break down everything else, there's just nothing that is as like reliable or decentralized. Like there's a lot of great other platforms, but they all have like their nuances and pitfalls. Like Read.cash is a great blogging platform, but they could just ban people or it could just end tomorrow. I have no idea because it's not actually using the blockchain to store the content and things like that. It's just run by donations and they're just kind of giving away Bitcoin Cash to people. Whereas like Hive is a self-sustaining ecosystem that is able to do all these things and you don't have to worry about maybe it's going to stop being up tomorrow or whatever. And Odyssey is great. The content is decentralized, but they could still remove your content off the front end. If no one is seeding it, no one else is going to really see it unless they go to great lengths to see it. And, they control monetization. So when we talk about getting value, eventually rewards on library are going to end and no one's going to really get any money anymore. And then people are going to be like, okay, why am I using this platform? I thought I was able to get money and I can still make money on YouTube, but I can't really make money on library. So like, what's the incentive? Yeah. So a lot of platforms are struggling with, why people should be there and what's incentivizing people. I think Hive does it the best. It's just really complex and there isn't as many people there because of that complexity.
I'm totally going to try to friend you. I'm Rebel Arts, by the way. That's my name.
I'll show you how to do that. I'm also convinced that if World War III does happen and nuclear winter happens as a result of this Ukraine-Russia stuff, the last social media post that gets upvoted and gets crypto associated with it will happen on Hive because there will be a server somewhere in a random part of the world where someone's still posting, hoping that one person sees it. Look,
I've learned so much.
Yeah, Scott,
I've learned so much.
I have to say thank you. Every single time you come on here,
by crypto right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I never thought of it as artistic. And in my brain, somewhere in there's some, I can't say it exactly or where it comes from, but like there's some weird thing going on when you explain it that I'm like, that's totally artistic.
Yeah.
Like that's an artist's brain that created it.
We'll get Krim on and we'll talk about NFTs and art more. But
well, I'm not even talking about
she's
it.
apparently on hiatus for a month or something like that. She's going to be a travel blogger on Hive through the end of October.
Is that the one who runs the art gallery?
Yes, and she also runs
and the heavy metal stuff.
Heavy metal radio. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I do know something.
Yeah. So, with that, Scott, I want to say thank you so much.
You've rocked, my friend.
Awesome. So, hopefully we didn't talk your ear off too much.
No. It's always good to talk crypto. It's always a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. And just a reminder to everyone, we will be back live next Monday. Probably, we might keep it at 9:30. We're usually on at 9.
I can't do 9 because I'm on theater.
Yes, yeah. She's going to be in A Christmas Carol locally. So
my 13-year-old daughter is okay with me doing the play with her. I figure if I don't do it now, it's never going to.
She's going to disown her.
So I'm just like, I'll never get the chance again. So here I am. Let me tell you, Scott.
This is getting too deep right now. This is getting too deep right now.
I went to fucking college for musical theater in New York City. Like, that's what I did. I have not sang, I don't know, 3 decades? 3 decades? 2, I'm not that old. 2 decades? And I go and I'm like, I asked them when I auditioned, I'm like, can I just do the ensemble? That's all I want. Like, I can't remember anything after 3 pregnancies. And the first night, and I don't sing harmonies. I've always been a high soprano. I don't sing harmonies. The first night I get given, and it's a small little fucking song, but it's a cappella with no fucking music with 2 other women singing fucking harmonies. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
If you can do that, you can learn crypto.
If I can do that, I can learn crypto. I can learn crypto before I spent my entire life avoiding harmonies. My entire life. I could totally learn crypto before that.
Yeah, Hive will be easy.
God, I'm sorry. That is my life tonight. I came into this. That's why I was like, give me the fucking wine.
When you're procrastinating learning harmonies, you can always check out Hive.
Yeah.
I'll go post about it on Hive. Rebel Arts.
Exactly.
With that, again, thank you, Scott. We are out. We will see you next Monday live, probably 9:30. And I got to line up a guest, so we'll see who's next week. So, Scott, have a good night. Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Thanks so much.
Peace.